So what I'm up against with my court case is right now is what is law is. And that's where we're at right now. My trial date is September 17th to the 20th. I have these two gentlemen here, Gordon there and Carl Francois. They're in a similar position, and I'm working with both of them. We understand who we are, and the positions where we're taking is what is law is.
To go.
Ask a few questions or what his opinion is with my case.
Am I ready?
Ready?
Born ready. I guess I like the way we're sitting around discussing this. Thanks for everything, Steve. Giving us an opportunity. Cameraman, visitors. My name is Gordon Bear. I come from what we know in our language as Inuit. That's in north of Winnipeg, about 10 hours maybe. And that's where I come from. Most of us are known as Cree, but in our language, we know ourselves as the Inuit. That's who we are. And we come from the land of the rock, where there's a lot of rock, like most of us refer to it as the Canadian Shield. We call it the Sinskat. The Sinskat, lots of rock. So that's where our homeland is. That's where we come from. We're not residents. I'm not resident. We're home to the land. That's where we live. Anyway, I guess when we're talking about law, I just wanted to, just for an opening, I wanted to put just a little statement I got from one of the Supreme Court rulings in Canada. And this is where Chief Justice Marshall proclaimed 2 centuries ago, "It is emphatically the province and the duty of the judicial department to say what is the law is." So with that, we look at the situation with the Indian people in North America, and especially, if you want, for reference, Canada. And we look at the question of land title, Indian title, jurisdiction, and what is the law is. And we try to find ourselves in a place where who we are. We know where we came from, but what is our title? Are we classified as citizens of the Canadian system, the United States system, according to even to the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, where there's birth and naturalization? That's the 2 sources of citizenship. And just where does the Indian fit in there when we look at citizenship, or what it is, or what it's supposed to be? And we look at naturalization. In order to be a citizen of Canada, for example, you have to go through a naturalization process. And with that, you have to be accepted by the Canadian government to be a citizen, probably in a court process or something. And the natural born, which as Indian people we are, because we're naturally born, our ancestors and everybody came from here, in this part of North America. So, in the Supreme Court rulings, legislation, Constitution, we look at those things. And we find ourselves, especially in a case such as Elk versus Wilkins, we found that there's two categories of government, common law and civil law, private and public. And the way the law sits, we look at the Constitution and the separation between common law and civil law in that process. What is judiciary and what is administrative? What is statutory, regulatory, administrative? We find that it's civil law. And of course, common law is private law. Just make decisions. And that's what we've been looking at for the longest time. And we look at Elk versus Wilkins. It says a lot about citizenship there, where we found that birth and naturalization and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And we found that subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a category, and in there it says excluding Indians not taxed. So in the case of Elk versus Wilkins, John Elk was an Indian that went to court, sued the government or whoever was running the election because he wanted to be, I guess, civilized, moved into the town and lived the civilized way. And he also wanted to vote. But when he went to the voting polls, Mr. Wilkins told him, you cannot vote because you're an Indian. And he took offense to that. So procedure and everything went through, and then they had to decide that in the Supreme Court, and they had to come up with what citizenship is, and that there was two categories of law, two governments, and two sources of citizenship. So much the same as in Canada. The provincial government and the federal government. Because the provincial government is the trustee for the crown or the queen, the lands are vested in the queen, the trustee is the province. And because land is involved in it, he has the upper hand in law regarding jurisdiction. So anything that has to be enacted into law in Canada, as I understand, after going through royal assent by a Governor General or the Privy Council, the one that signs that will make it legislation is the Lieutenant Governor of the province. In every province there's one. So thereby it tells you who has jurisdiction over what. The Dominion of Canada, or the federal government, if you will, were given the duty of good governance in its statutory, administrative, regulatory policy. And of course the province with legislation and law. And the lands vested in the crown, the province is the trustee. That's the one that collects all the benefits or the monies that come from the use of the land, thereby having jurisdiction over the other. Common law versus civil law type of a thing. And we found that out when we went into research, and we found a case called St. Catherine's Milling Lumbering Company versus the Queen. And then the other case was Regina. Regina versus St. Catharines Milling and Lumbering Company. There it explains a lot of stuff to us about the law, and that's where the judge made the statement. He said, as Chief Justice Marshall proclaimed 2 centuries ago, it is emphatically the province and the duty of the judicial department to say what is the law is. So with that in mind, we said to ourselves, well, who are we? And how come we turned down John Elk when he wanted to be a citizen of the United States under the Constitution, the 14th Amendment? He fit the bill. But even though he wanted to be a citizen of the United States, he couldn't do it on his own. The United States had to accept him. He had to go through a court process to do it. So our question came to be, when did we Indian people in Canada ever go through a naturalization process to become citizens of Canada? And then we looked at the Constitution Act 1867, was also known as the British North America Act. And we found in there the 2 systems of government and their jurisdictions and the duties they were assigned. One was private, one was public. But overall, when we look at Article 109 of that Constitution Act, 1867, Article 109 is known as Indian title. So when you look at Indian title, and the trustees of province, anytime there's a trustee, there has to be a beneficiary. And there had to have been an agreement made before to come to that conclusion. Then we looked at 1763 Royal Proclamation. Right in the opening statement, it said that the lands were vested in the sovereign, or the king or queen. So how did the lands become vested? So we did more research past 1400s. And we found that there were stipulations from a treaty that was made in Europe centuries ago. And that treaty stipulation carried on into what we know today as Canada regarding Indian people. And the reason for the Indian title and the trusteeship that was put there for somebody else to run somebody else's property. So we looked at that. And we came up and said, okay, we went to the courts with Frank. We entered a constitutional question to the court. And in there, we stated that our defense was going to be the legal separation between expatriated Indians, minorities, and the sovereign. That means a person with private rights, a private person with private rights versus or, difference between a public servant, or a natural born subject and a naturalized person, naturalization. These are the differences we have today. So we qualify as private persons with private rights, and the rights and titles and privileges that goes with it. We never give those up. The other question we asked was, in the beginning, we've always been recognized as Indians. And how come the names changed through the process of time, whatever? What a lot of our people are called here First Nations, Indigenous, Native, Treaty Indians, whatever. So back to what Justice Marshall said, what is the law is. And law doesn't change. Law is what it is the day it's made. It never changes. And that's what we look at when we look at who we are. That's when we say we're private persons, private rights, common law citizens. And that's the question the Canadian government in particular, and the two governments like the provincial and the federal have to answer to the Indian people. When 9124 of the Constitution Act 1867, lands and lands reserved for Indians, when it went under the jurisdiction, if it did, under the federal government, was there an agreement? Was the Indian given an opportunity to say who or what? These are the things we look at. So when we say 9124, everybody was put in that category, whether they signed treaty or not, because the Northwest Angle Treaty number 3 made a big difference in how the Indian is treated because of that treaty. Because they literally surrendered their rights, titles, and privileges in exchange for what? See, so, but that wasn't the understanding, of course, but this is what we look at now. For the moment, we agree that the lands are vested in the Crown, or the Queen, or the Sovereign, and the trustees, the province. But we question who agreed. Was it by our consent to be put as a private person with private rights, with citizenship, to be a ward of another nation? Okay? When and why and how come that happened? When you look at a ward in its definition of a ward, it's like a child. It's incompetent, can't look after himself. And we did more research and we found that 3 instruments of law that's used, what we can call law, or as known as law, whether it is or not, it's another question that has to be answered, is alienation, severalty, and guardianship. These are we feel are very dangerous for us as Indian people, because that is not us. We shouldn't be putting those instruments of law in our own land. That is a question that has to be answered, and we come to the point in time now where we're making our stand and saying we have rights. We have private rights. Your Constitution, 1867, Article 109, specifically states Indian title is in there. That's why it's classified as Indian title. And in your Supreme Court rulings of St. Catharines Milling and Lumbering Company versus the Queen, in your remarks there, when I say you, I'm talking about the people that made the agreements and everything. It says in there that our title to the land predates 1763 and the Constitution 1867. All it did was to recognize that there was Indian title. I'm okay with that. I'm also okay if the lands are vested in the Crown. I'm also okay with if the province is the trustee, the treasurer for the Queen of England. I'm okay with that. In my research, anyway, in my understanding and my comprehension of what law is. However, I have a problem with the beneficiary the royalties that come from the use of the land, we should be getting that through the trustee, not to somebody else. And we should be recognized for who we really are when we state and say who we are. But in our research also, in Consolidated One Unique Cases 1975, it stated in there, the judge said, I cannot bring a casus amicis into a law or into a treaty. And my understanding of that and how I comprehend what he meant was, I cannot bring something that has not been entered into a law. Okay? And when I look at other cases, that they will not deal with the Indian under a treaty, but only through legislation. So the time has come for the Indian to deal with governments, with the sovereign crown of England by legislation. Because they wrote, and they wrote all this in law. These words I'm saying regarding the law is their language. I'm not making up anything. I'm just as well as bound by law to follow it and compelled to do it. I'm not against anybody. I'm not going to put up a blockade or whatever or walk 1,000 miles just to prove my point. I'm going to write you a letter and let you know, or visit you and ask for an invitation to do it. And this is what's happening today. We need to understand who's who in our land and how we sit there and who we are. And the agreements of the past have to be resolved and come to a compromise where there's an understanding between Frank and the province of Manitoba or the federal government or the sovereign Queen of England. Who's Frank? Who's really Frank? Is it the Frank under a statutory, regulatory, administrative policy? Or is it Frank, the private person with private rights under common law? And he specifically stated that there was a legal separation made in the Queen's Bench in Canada. From there, the law is bound to uphold. The judges, whoever, prosecutors, they're compelled to uphold the law for what it is, or they breach their oath of allegiance and their oath of office. And we don't want to do that either. When we look at the definition of burden, a lot of people say, that's bothersome, but when you look at it in the legal context of burden, it means a duty and a responsibility. That's both to the provincial government and to the federal government. That they have a duty and a responsibility to the Indian for the use and benefit of the land that he is supposed to enjoy also. And when you look at the case of Elk versus Wilkins, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, there was an argument about that because it didn't apply to Indians, but that it meant subject to the jurisdiction thereof meant excluding Indians not taxed. And that to me is Frank, me and whoever else that follows this way. That's the understanding, that's what we came up with. So that's who we are. And I think for the purposes of other people like us, and for the other people, our other brothers and sisters that have been, I'll say, ignorant, not because they're stupid, but because of they haven't been informed or educated in many of the things that happen in law. And even them in their own identity, they should know who they are and what they're afforded by their Constitution. We need to sit down with our people in Canada, not only as an Indian or a white man, but everybody should have that understanding that we the people, for the people, to some degree, affords us the protection of the Constitution. So with that in mind, and I look at that, we the people of this land, ancestors upon ancestors, and time remembered, not time immemorial, because we have our creation stories to verify there was a beginning. We need to look at that. We need to look at from the perspective as we see it from the Creator, where the Creator put us to live. We had a sovereign people. At one time, it wasn't only the kings or queens that walked sovereign on this land and on this planet. It was everybody that was put on this planet, and they were given territories to live in. And that's where they were sovereign, and they had direct communication with Creator. Somehow or another, that has not happened. It has transpired into something else, and it comes up to a jurisdictional question of who's who and who owns this and who owns that. Nobody owns land, as far as I understand anyway. We were allowed to use it and to protect it. And we were given this land to live in, but also to protect it and nurture it. That is our duty that every human being was given on this planet. Whether it be if a hierarchy of whatever system that's followed today, up there, financially or down here, whatever, everybody, we understand to be equal. We've always maintained that from our ancestors, that everybody is equal under the eyes of the Creator. And that's the mindset and the belief that we've followed since the beginning of time. So we need to educate our people. We need to know who's who has rights, who has titles, who has privileges. And I believe everybody does. That's my belief in it. But there's also got to be a law that we understand today we're bound by. Okay? Our identity has a lot to do with it. Who we are, who we say we are is who we are. You know? So, just a little briefing on it. And then again, you know, if you're going to say who I am, you have to produce it in writing that I consented to it and agreed to it or asked for it. Because you just can't say because you feel like it that I am who you say I am. I am who I say I am because I am who I am. That's why I say I am who I am. Does it make sense to you? Makes a lot of sense to me. So, the question of jurisdiction, the subject matter of the federal government, or the matter at bar with the Constitution, we have to follow the matter at bar with the Constitution. That's where we're coming from when we speak. We'll abide by the law. Prove what you say I am in writing, legally, and I will follow. Otherwise, I'll follow what I believe, and I say, and I'll be who I am. I say I am within the law. That's written right in your law, in your Constitution. Common law, civil law. The law of the land, the supreme law of the land is common law. The law of the sea, admiralty, civil law. They belong separately. And that's what we're saying in the courts now. We're of the common law, we're of the supreme law of the land. We'll follow that. See? So it's not something that's difficult, confusing, or hard to do. Law is simple. It's just how you understand in the language that you use to explain it. That's in line with the law. We're not lawbreakers. We're lawmakers. Aren't judges? Well, what's we the people for the people all about that? We are not lawmakers also, and we follow the law. Just a briefing, I think because of this, at this time, because this is just a beginning of what's going to transpire through time, for me, I think we need to go further and deeper, and a lot of awareness has to transpire for the people, because it's for some people that are still just first for the first timers thing, heard this, it's, you know, it's kind of like a mind blower. But, and also, not to take away from what I just said, it needs to be very clear in the minds of people. Because what is, law is, you know? So with that, just for the moment, I thank everybody here. I know there's going to be more. And in closing, I just want to say, for the moment, we're in prophecy times now. There is going to be hard times. There is going to be a rebuttal for Mother Earth and the forces of nature, as was prophesied before, and it will happen again. We have to get prepared for that. We have to get the people together, and we have to make this stand together, and the only thing that is going to help us through all this chaos and confusion and time of cleansing is the love for one of each other. That's the only thing that's going to help us. That is the law. That's the real law. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, Gordon. You know, I'll have a little addressing or question or opinion on what is law is. We talk about common law, private person, private law. That is, when you say what is law is, a common law you can never change. It's there. That law is for you. That is for me. And it can never be superseded or taken away. It can never be taken away. So, for an example, the Alex versus Wilkins, that John L. Even if he wanted to be a citizen and consent to it himself, but the law states he can't, because that's the way he's created. God has created that way. God created me this way under that common law. I cannot surrender my rights or the land or my freedom, because God gave me this common law, this private person, private rights. I cannot change that. if I'm going to follow the law, I cannot change that. I cannot remove myself from the common law and put myself into a different law. And that's what people need to understand, and that's what I got to understand. And it's good, you know, like part of that is in that Elks versus Wilkins Supreme Court case, and that's what I see, is that today I see that I cannot surrender my rights. I cannot surrender the land. I cannot surrender my freedom. And by the common law, we're all equal. I cannot be put as a ward, child, not retarded, that I have to be looked after. And that's what the ward means to me, and by common law, by my law, my Creator's law, the first law of the land, I can never do that. And that's my comment to the common law. That's how I see it. That's how I view it as myself.
So you're saying it's not yours to give up
Yes.
because it was given to you
Yeah.
by the Creator, is what
Yes.
you're saying?
Yeah. So we have songs that states to that. Exactly. That song, in the words of the Creator that's put into a song, is when you sing it, you understand that what is law is clearly. And a lot of our people sing these songs and you don't understand, because you don't take that time to interpret the meaning of that. If you want to call it a scripture, you know, like it's like a scripture, and you have to define that, the meaning of what the Creator is saying. And we have all the songs. I talked about, you know, we have 4 different sun dances. That's the Buffalo people, the Thunder Nation sun dance, the Buffalo sun dance, the Eagle sun dance, and the backwards people sun dance. These are the 4 sun dances, and they all have their own different songs to each Sundance, and then they have their own dress codes. They have their own code of ethics, code of conducts. They're all different. This one is not the same as this one. This one is not the same as this one or this one. And this one is not the same as the other 3. They're all separate, because they're different clans too. So when I listen to those songs or the Creator's words in those songs, they are you have to understand that you cannot change that. It's that way. You have to follow those songs. And if you don't understand those songs, then you will change things there. But if you understand it, you won't change it, because it clearly states how it's supposed to be. And that is what law is.
So a Creator-given structure,
Yes. Yes.
protocol,
Yes.
law.
Yeah. And these songs have been passed on generation to generation. But I don't know when those were here, but here for a long time.
The other thing too, when we're talking about law, my brother asked me, and he got me on it. Well, what do you think about what's written on that paper? He says. So I just kind of gave my opinion of it. And he said, I don't care what you think. I was just checking you out. It's what the law says is what I look at. He said, doesn't matter what I think. You see? So that's it.
And he got you, didn't he?
Yeah, he got me. But then I learned something, right? What is the law is, right? When you understand that, then you fit yourself in there, where due process, equal protection of the law, it's there to protect you. It's there to help you, it's there to give order. You know? But if you're not in it, well then you're somewhere else. And you'll be treated like somebody else. But if you're in the right place, with your identity and who you are, then it'll protect you. It's just that simple.
You're somewhere else, you're dealing. And it's in their language right now.
There's a case that Cherokee Nation versus Georgia. They talk about distinct people or foreign people, right? And we can't be classified as foreign, even though we're under the jurisdiction of the United States of America or under the jurisdiction of the Union of States. There's two, eh? There's always two of everything. That's what I was telling these guys. There's two sources of citizenship. There's two categories of law. It's two. See? So you gotta know which one you want. It's that simple. If you're a public servant, well then you have duties that is assigned to you by somebody. If you're a private person, well then you got rights. And you're immune to certain things also. See? But you're still bound and compelled to abide by the law. I think when it comes to the land jurisdiction and who has it, I would say when you look at jurisdiction, I have a bit of a problem with the question of jurisdiction. Not because I don't agree with it or not because I agree with it, but because I don't like the word. Okay? If you have title, if the lands are vested in you, let's say for example you're the Queen of England, the lands are vested in you, and you've assigned a trustee to the land for purposes, for benefit, for commercial gain, whatever. Okay? That entity or that person, whatever, has a job to do. But because of the trust and everything, there's also got to be a title holder at one time that gave that, such a situation here. The Indians have title to this land, whether it's recorded or not, they were here. And they lived here. And everything that shows that they were here before anybody else is here. See? So that's not a problem. Neither does, I don't think the Crown has a problem with that either. The Queen of England does not have a problem with that. He knows who we are, or she knows who we are. So now, okay, let's do things right. If you're going to keep me at the daycare and run the country, fine. I want a 10-bedroom house. I want freedom to move in the land. And I want a bit, if not a good percentage of the money we're making off of this land that I used to live in or I call my home. Is there anything wrong with that? No. I don't see anything wrong with that. It's just like to put it in another scenario. If you have a farm, all of a sudden the law comes down and says, these lands are vested in me now. You can go and live in a little shed over there. Everybody will look after you. And these are the rules and policies you're going to have to follow. I don't know, give you your check once a month. What? You know? It's like that. Where's this freedom of movement? Where's this sovereign business? You know? Taxation, to me, is the smoothest, cleverest mechanism that I call slavery today. This is what it is. Why are we paying taxes? Why can't we just benefit from the land like everybody else should? You know? But we're excluded from that as Indian people, or supposed to be. You know, these are some of the questions that have been asked for, what? Since 1763? Or beyond. There is a fund they call the Syndicate Trust, where all the money that's made in the land goes. And every province is a treasurer to that money. Why does the federal government, from an application from First Nation for fiscal monies, why do they go to the province? Who's the treasurer of that money? And why can't they just apply it themselves and give us that money if they think it's theirs, instead of using our signatures to do it? You see? So these questions we need answers for. We need to sit down and say, okay, either we're beneficiaries and have something coming to us, what they call royalties, or you have failed your whole system of law, and you have failed the Indian. We need to look at those. And we need to think very seriously. This division that's created between other people and Indian people. White people, yellow people, black people, and us. You know. There's all kinds of names in the English language of different people of the world. But every people like us, Dakota, is Inuit. We have our own name for us. You know? It has nothing to do with color either. So these things we need to bring to the table and say, this is who we are. And this is what we believe we're entitled.
For understanding.
And understanding there, yeah. To recognize each other as these people. Yeah. And these are the laws we'll agree to be bound by. Common law or civil law. No matter. Civil law to me, even in Black's law, even Uniform Commercial Code, all that kind of stuff, civil law is the law of the Sea Admiralty law. What's it doing on land? You know, what's it doing governing the land when there is supreme law of the land, which is common law? So these things, right? I mean, it's a fair question, but I want the truth. I want to hear the truth. We shouldn't be living like this in our own land. You know? We should have a home like the Radisson. Every Indian on this continent should have a home like this. instead of a little box out in the middle of the desert where it's wasted land and nobody wants it. We should be living right at the mouth of the river where there's a lot of fish and fresh air, fresh water. Enjoy the land. Instead of in some slum apartment in the middle of the city of Winnipeg. And you're looked at as somebody that's, you better go somewhere else. You know? It's not a very good feeling. And yet we're taught ever since we were people to love everybody. We've proved that in over 500 years that we still love everybody. We do. We have our arguments, we have our little beefs and little qualms and everything else, but at the end of the day, you're still my friend, my brother. See? So we've survived the test of time, and we'll be here long after everybody's gone, even though that's not the plan for us. So we're going to be around. We'll still be around.
Yeah, I'm still a bushman. I still keep my trails open to my trap land where my grandfather's great-grandfather's fought. They can take me out of the bush, but they'll never take the bush out of me.
Yes, it's a part of you. Thank you for that. Thank
I'm giving my bro a chance to speak now.
Well,
you. What are you trapping?
way north of Thompson.
No, what do you trap on your trap line?
Beaver,
Different types of game?
marten,
Martin.
mink, squirrel, lynx.
This is off
Fox,
top. This is
yeah.
off topic, but how is the market for that stuff right now?
Well,
Pricing?
the market for marten is okay. It's fair.
It's fair?
Like, we can make a good living out of that, but
Yep.
we got to get more marten, and we got to manage it so we don't overtrap.
Yeah.
It's we got to manage our land now.
The communities have always self-managed their own.
Yeah.
They're aware of what they're harvesting.
Mm-hmm.
And typically their standards are higher than any
Yeah,
government body.
yeah. And the markets, Greenpeace and that, it's hard to make a living now.
And it's
The
funny,
prices are low because of Greenpeace and that.
and that natural fur harvested properly is
Yeah.
greener
Yeah,
than anything else when you think about it.
yeah, management.
It's very environmentally friendly.
Well, I'd like to thank Gordon for his opinion and his input. And what his knowledge, law is. And I just think I'm going to give the floor to my good friend Carl Francois. Few things to say.
Yeah, I got a few things to say. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for everything. And I'm glad that, Frank is my good friend since I met him. We see eye to eye. And, there's a lot of issues that have come up since about this time now. And, when I begin to understand about the law, how the system works, I begin to, get more in tune into it. And, I enjoy life. I enjoy, doing business, being in other areas, to kind of evolve with the system. To me, business is good if it's done right. Sure, I got nothing against business, any company, any corporation. And, when you look at the law, just like my name, Carl Francois, my parents entered an agreement with the government, which was thereby it created a trust, and that is why no one has title to the name, because it's a legal entity created by more than one party. And the issue is not about title. The real issue He owns the equity tied up in the title. Like I said before, equity is king. If you own the equity, you control, period, like the legal person. I'll put on the law with, and I guess like a triangle. Well, for example, like Bill Gates, he's the administrator, he's the top dog. And you look at the trustees, the employees, and the shareholders or the beneficiaries, in any corporation that wants to make money. And that's how the legal system is structured. You got a tripart. And, as for myself, the rights that we have, that's what we've been talking about here, And as a sovereign, I look at myself as a sovereign, with common law rights and everything else. And I've experienced that in court for myself and also from the younger people that have, I guess, to be a consultant or an advocate, a speaker for them. I've tried the courts, and the system that I've used as a sovereign, it works. I applied the law, but, I didn't make the law, they did. And we talk about, Admiralty law, their law is supposed to stop right at the sea of the high tide. The guys mentioned, how come it came on the land, And when you look at being the ward of the government, it's just like your birth certificate, You consented to that, but you didn't know when you were younger. But with a birth certificate, it's a powerful document. I can go to Queen's Bench, any kind of charge that I might have, and then just lift that thing up. I can make the judge run out of the courtroom just with that paper. The legal person, that's Carl Francois, not this guy here. This is the guy that you want to put in jail right here. Go ahead. He's the one that has all the equity, the corporation, Corporation doesn't breathe, live, eat, It's a piece of paper, that's all it is. That's where the money is made. Everything is in trust. And, I begin to understand how the system works, and that's the reason why there's 98% of the Indian people are incarcerated because they don't know the law. 98%. They're all in prisons. Built for them, now they want to build bigger prisons. And my understanding is, we talk about there's always a barrier there. There's a barrier you can't cross in the law. In the common law, and just like in the courts, it's summary convictions. That's all it is. Criminal code is that thick. There's no common law in there. Just summary convictions. And so once you go to court, of course they'll ask you, how do you plead? Guilty or not guilty, right off the hop. And as soon as you say, like you're trying to defend yourself, you say, oh, I'm not guilty. You're in the boat. You're in Admiralty jurisdiction now. You got your enlistment papers right here. You're part of the army now. The common law citizenship. I call it a citizenship. Anybody wasn't on there before, but it came to shore here. But just like being in the army, when they say when they say to you jump, they'll say how high. With that, and with the courts, like when you deal. For me, I deal with things now in a common law, Queen's Bench. It's all civil stuff. That's where you take all your grievances that you have. You take them to court. You don't go protest. You don't do this, don't do that. You got to go to jail. Even though sometimes it's illegal when you do blockades. You get served. Here you go. Maybe they don't. Not supposed to touch it, but they do, right? But when you look at the public roads, the roads are public roads. We own them. We're the public. Just like these roads here. It may be on the street here on this side of the building, and you smoke a joint. Cops come chasing you. You can go to the road and smoke it there. They're not going to bother you because you're not on somebody's property. And it's all property, that's how I see things. In business, it's all about property. Who holds the title, the equity, the land title, the allodial title, Okay, who gave the power to the government to say, oh, okay, here's your certificate, go run a pipeline, go open a mine shaft. This is my land and here's my deed, go ahead, do business. All right. Okay, who gave him that, that title, the government, where did he get it from? And to me, the way I see it, like there's two queens, Queen Elizabeth House of Windsor, or the other queen, the Crown Corporation of the inner city of London. It's a 1 square mile of land right in the heart of the city of London. Even the Queen needs permission to go in there. That's the corporation that's doing all this. It's all money, fiat money, that's all it is. To me, it doesn't matter how far you can go with, agreements and whatnot. Sure, you can go back. You can go right back and take your paperwork, whatever they got against you, file it in court. I want to know what's going on here. I want full disclosure, just like the Indian Act. I can go file the Indian Act in there, get rid of it, rescind it. You guys have a duty and obligation, to under international trust agreements, to recognize that. But they're not. They're just watering down all the rights. They're watering it down. And we don't see no benefits in that area anymore, As for me, I don't register anything at all. I still follow the rules and the laws that was given to us. And, it's good. Business is good if it's done right, but we have to be included in all those businesses, right? And I want to brief up a little bit on the Constitution. Like I mentioned, Section 52, that's the supreme law of the land for Canada. It's a corporation to me. And Section 32, that's for government agents. That's what it is. Judgment in commerce, And it doesn't apply to me, it doesn't protect me, but it protects the privileges or whatever is given to me. And any person that's an agent of the government is bound by that law, Section 32. But it doesn't supersede Section 52, that's the supreme law of the land. But we're still on top of that, when it comes from abroad. And like I said, it's good, and we always talk about benefits. To me, any kind of contract that's going to benefit the Indian people, it's good. Let's do business, Put us right in the boat. We'll sign it, we'll look at it. In any contract that I mentioned before was, full disclosure, right? Consent and fallible consideration. You know what that is, fallible consideration. Put us in there. We'll gladly do business. As for Frank, he's in a position to be there, to be part of the contract. Not, not sign all the contracts now and then talk to him later. That's what you see. Sometimes, the cops will sue somebody and they'll talk about it later. It's too late for that, But yeah, it's, when you look at the law, there's always a barrier, right? There's a weaker law that the summary convictions is just for janitors and whatnot. That's the law. But when you look at the other side, that's common law. That's where everybody's bound by that area. That's where you take your grievances down to there. You deal with it in courts. And I mentioned that you go protest and whatnot. I've seen a lot of stuff going on with the chiefs here. I've been ridiculed and whatnot. Well, yeah, because you're on the janitor side of the law. You'll be ridiculed there. Because they're not taking this thing over here. But at the same time, you got to take your hat off here, like a judge has 3 hats. He's got 3 hats. Okay, where am I gonna fight this guy here? He's got this charge here. Oh, I'll put him over here. I'll take his hat and put this one on. Okay, here we go. Right? And that's how it is. That's how the system works. You know, and the more I begin to understand that, like, the more I'm tuned into learning more about it. You know, to benefit me, not to be suppressed down there. You know. And it's good, like I said, things are, you know, the door is beginning to open a little bit for the government, right, for us, you know, to be part of the business, you know, the aspects of it. And like we've said, we got no problem doing business, you know, as long as we can benefit, the people benefit, then it's good. But if we're gonna just be, you know, suppressed, you know, with all these documents and whatnot, all the regulations, the rules, the policies, it's no good. Of course, you're always going to have opposition, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter where you are, you'll always have opposition. But, you know, you involve people like us, the Indian people, into any contract, it's good. It's good to do business. And everybody benefits, you know. There'll be less things going on in hospitals and here and there, you know. You need to, you know, have an understanding of the agreements, you know. People got to be part of the agreements. And sure it's good, but then again, you know, when things get out of hand, and that's where the law comes in. That's where we're going to deal with it. It doesn't matter what corporation it is. Like I said, a corporation is just a piece of paper. You know, it's not going to speak for itself. It's not going to, you know, do this. But under common law, you know, a sovereign people, we have the right to do that. Like we mentioned, rights and privileges and, you know, stuff like that. And sure, you know, business that comes around here, you know, it's good. It's good for the people, you know. Seems like we're almost like living in a third world countries now. You know, Canada is, like they say, it's the richest nation in the world, almost. But we're dealing with two things, you know. Okay, if something happens, you know, if I exhaust all my remedies, then who am I going to go see? The Queen. You know, I'm not going to see the Privy Council. I'm not going to see these other people. I'm going to see the Queen's private secretary, private guy. That's the guy that I need to talk to. And that's where I'm going to take my grievances down there. If I exhaust everything, if the courts don't listen to me, don't help me, all right, the Queen's got at least, what, 2,000, 3,000 lawyers under her. You know, they're damaging me here now. When I tell that to the Queen, these guys don't want to listen to me of everything that I've done in courts and whatnot, but that's the last resort. And that's where the action happens. You know, every time people go to court, you know, are they damaging the Queen Elizabeth of the House of Windsor, or the Crown Corporation of the Inner City of London? The Crown, they're the Queen. That's where all the money is. That's where the Inner City of London, that's the international money bank of the world, right there. That's where the money flows from, not from the Queen. So if people begin to understand that, you know, like it's good to bring the message out so people can have that good understanding of where we stand, you know, as well as, you know, where the white people stand, you know, whatever minorities, you know. As long as you know your rights and the law, then we touched down on taxes. It's all a fraud. That's all it is. You know, I kind of understand when I bought a new vehicle, they give me the agreement and I sign it, and it becomes a check, and they turn around and I have to pay that vehicle every month. I signed a $30,000 check for them right here, and they turn around and charge me another $30,000 every month to pay that. You know, stuff like that I understand, you know. And like I said, in 1947, that's when Canada went broke. You know, they went bankrupt. That's why everything is based on credit. You know, but there's a lot of money sitting there in a consolidated fund, revenue fund. How come we can't use that if it's our money? And we mentioned about hydro bills, how come we're paying for those? If it's funded publicly, and seems like the government's saying, or hydro or whatever, we're not public people, but we are. How come we're paying for those? just like your driver's license and your wallet, and touch capacity, right? You know, at the time of this charge happened, was I performing a function of government? I want to know that, prove that to me. Show me the payroll stubs. Show me the payroll records that I am an agent of the government, that I work for them in that point in time. They're not going to answer that in court. Do you have to discharge it, throw it out? Do you know, once they know who you are, they're not going to bother you anymore. You know, just like being on roads, you know. Nowadays you hear in the news, the police, you know, they stop people, traffic violations. It's a quota. It's all about this. It's not about being a peace officer anymore. It's law enforcement, you know, to follow the statutes, to make money. It's a business. And Canada is a business, it's a corporation. You know, but it's good. You know, it's good. But where are our benefits? You know, if Canada is making millions of dollars, putting them into all these offshore accounts or whatever, we want some of that. Let's do business. Let's make life easy. You know, let's see eye to eye. And you know, like all these corporations, they go to different countries to minimize the cost. You know, the bottom line. You know, they can make a pair of jeans in Mexico for 50 cents. By the time it gets here, you're spending $50 for it. You know, and all these taxes, we're paying so much tax, nobody wants to run a business in Canada anymore. They can't afford it. You know, we've been taxed left and right. So, you know, that's, to me, it's all a scheme and a fraud. That's how I see it. That's how I understand it about the law. And with these areas, and, you know, to me, business is good, and we want to do business, you know. If people benefit from the government and whatnot, it's good. There'll be less chaos, less, you know, stuff going on. Everybody will be happy. But it doesn't seem that way anymore. You know, people are getting suppressed. The leaderships in some bands, you know, they're filtering all the money that the people need, and the people are starving. And it's already given, and they have no right to do that. But, you know, if you have a good agreement, if you have people to understand how the agreement is set, you know, let's go for it. Business is good, like I said. I'm not against it. You know, if the government's happy, if the corporations are happy, and if the people are happy, then it's good. It's a good thing. Business is a good thing, but it's got to be done right. You know, not to be, you know, put under the paper here. Well, here's the Indian here. I'll put him down here. We'll talk about him later. Let's do this first. Then we'll bring him out again. You know, some of these agreements, they've been collecting dust for years. They're not going to look at them. You know, do I have to go through freedom of information to access all that stuff? Could be done. Why not? But it's up to the people now to understand, to do research, and we have to bring all this information out for the people to know, not just for the Indian people, for everybody. The whole country needs to know what's going on. And I think it's a good thing. Then maybe the government will begin to understand. You know, these guys know their rights. You know, if we keep fighting them, we're not going to have any revenue coming in. Just imagine you shut every light here in Winnipeg. You know, every city here with the hydro go broke. You know, if people stop paying taxes all at once, who's going to look after the roads? Who's going to keep the gas going and everything? You know, that's what they don't want. But, you know, I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be part of what's happening. And, you know, let's talk business. Let's do things right. Let's make the record straight, you know. And I'm glad for Frank to invite me here, and for you, Steve, and everybody that's here. I thank you.
Thank you, Carl.